Interlocking versus retwisting. Both of these are just ways to maintain the cylindrical shape of your lock. Actually just making your locks look uniform and you know, making sure the roots aren't merged and all of that stuff. These are just ways to do that. Retwisting, as you probably already know, is just getting a lock and twisting it. People twist clockwise, you can twist anti-clockwise, but the common kind of consensus and method is making sure that all your locks are twisted in the same way. Because if you're twisting clockwise and then the next time you retwist you're twisting anti-clockwise, you're kind of undoing the work you've already done, essentially. Now, there are different ways to retwist, and you can use different products. So you can use gel, which is the most common way, people using locking gel. You can use oil and water, which is another way to retwist if you want to reduce buildup. People also use wax. Just don't use wax. That'll cause excessive buildup. Like, wax is so thick and locks tend to hold everything in. So if you're putting a really thick product that isn't very like water soluble, you're cooked. And there's different ways to retwist. You can literally just do what I did and retwist with your fingers. Just like that, and then add a clip in there to make it hold, dry your hair, bam, bam, bam. You can also do kind of like a comb method. I see people combing kind of like the new growth and then wrapping it around itself with a comb, basically making a comb coil. Or you can even do locksmithing, which is its own thing in and of itself, and then there's palm rolling. These are just different ways to retwist your lock. And then there's interlocking, which is essentially creating an internal braid with your hair. If I got this lock right here, you can see there's quite a bit of new growth. Essentially, you'd be putting the lock into the new growth, so you shove it in, and then going through points of the coordinates. So there's north, east, south, and west, and you're basically putting your hair through each of those points. Now, same with retwisting, there's different ways to interlock your hair. There's different point rotations, so you can have a 2-point, 3-point, or 4-point rotation. 2-point is literally going from 2 points, so if you imagine there's north and east, you're just going north, east, north, east, north, east. There's 3-point rotation, so that's when you choose 3 points, so that's, let's say, north, east, and south. Now, it's important for a 3-point rotation, you're gonna go through one of the coordinates kind of twice within one rotation. So let's say you're going north, east, and south. You want to start with east, and then you can go north or south. But let's say you go east, then north, then back to east, then go south. And essentially it's because if you kind of go from north to east to south, back to north, you're going through the same hole twice because you're just going up and then down, you know what I mean? So going through that anchor point stops you from going through the same hole twice. And then 4-point rotation is literally just like going through all the coordinates, so north, east, south, west, north, east, south, west. The main thing with interlocking is just not going through the same hole twice, because then that creates a hole in your lock, and then you have kind of a weakness or a point where the lock can essentially break. If you go through the same hole twice, it's okay, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you're closing up those holes that you'll be making with interlocking. That's basically the difference between the two. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions with interlocking. Firstly, interlocking won't necessarily thin your hair out. Like, I feel like when people say that, there's a bit of fear mongering, there's a bit of like, never interlock your hair, it's the worst thing you can do. Firstly, I want to say, if people with sister locks, they interlock their hair. Retying is literally interlocking and going through the rotations. And people with sister locks, their hair can be, obviously their hair is, the lock is skinnier, but that's not thinning. That's just the lock is skinnier because of, one, the size of parts, and two, the method they're using is just more tighter and compact. It's like a comb coil isn't going to be as compact as a braid. Interlocking done correctly is not going to thin your hair out. Now, if you interlock rather than retwist, your locks will probably be skinnier or thinner, but that doesn't mean weaker, and that doesn't mean that you're damaging your hair. If you're doing interlocking incorrectly, of course, your locks are going to get thinner and weaker, but that's the same if you're retwisting incorrectly or retwisting too often or just putting too much tension on your scalp with styles. The same thing's going to happen. If you're doing either of these correctly, you're going to be fine. Like, do not be scared to try interlocking your hair, as long as, if you're doing it yourself, make sure you're educated and you know what you're doing. And if you're letting someone else interlock your hair, then, you know, just make sure they know what they're doing. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, I personally interlock my hair, and I think like the pros are the I guess let's just call it the retie or the retwist or whatever you want to call it with interlocking just lasts longer, like because the hair is tight, it's locked in, it's not going to slip or go anywhere, whereas with the retwist it's kind of like it can unravel, and retwists are meant to unravel. They're not meant to just be permanent, you know, like life happens, you're going to live life, you're going to sweat, moisture is going to get on your hair, like, you know, a retwist isn't necessarily meant to last longer, it's just there to shape the lock and keep things neat and tidy. Then when you come to the next retwist, you kind of redo that maintenance. Interlocking, it does last, like it's again, you're kind of making an internal braid with your hair, so it's just tighter, you can do whatever you want, you can go running, you can sweat, you can wash your hair whenever you want. So I feel like interlocking, if you have a more active lifestyle, is so useful. But if you want thicker locks, then retwisting will probably be the better option for you, because like interlocking like just means that you have a tighter compactor lock, which means there's less puffiness with it, which means it is thinner. And thinner doesn't mean bad, thinner just means the size of the lock is smaller, okay? Then less, yeah. And there is technically less risk with retwisting, because with interlocking, there's more opportunities to go wrong with interlocking than with retwisting. Again, that's not meant to scare you from interlocking. It's just saying if anyone's doing any incorrectly, then it's bad. But I feel like people are more likely to interlock incorrectly than retwist incorrectly. That's basically interlocking versus retwisting. Let me know if I missed anything down in the comments. Let me know if there's any information that you want to share as well with other people in the lock community. And yeah, I hope you learned something new, and I hope this video helped. Peace.